Translation: being situated in his original Krishna conscious position, a pure devotee does not identify with the body. Such a devotee should not be seen from a materialistic point of view. Indeed, one should overlook a devotee having a body born in a low family, a body with a bad complexion, a deformed body, or a diseased or infirm body. According to ordinary vision, such imperfections may seem prominent in the body of a pure devotee, but despite such seeming defects, the body of a pure devotee cannot be polluted. It is exactly like the waters of the Ganges, which sometimes during the rainy season are full of bubbles, foam and mud. The Ganges water does not become polluted. Those who are advanced in spiritual understanding will bathe in the Ganges without considering the condition of the water. So we're nearly finished the purport actually of this verse. Just a couple of pages left. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. So we'll just read some more from the purport. If we consider the bodily defects of a Vaishnava, we should understand that we are committing an offense at the lotus feet of the Vaishnava. An offense at the lotus feet of a Vaishnava is very serious. Indeed, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has described this offense as Hati Mata, the mad elephant offense. A mad elephant can create a disaster, especially when it enters into a nicely trimmed garden. One should therefore be very careful not to commit any offense against a Vaishnava. Every devotee should be ready to take instructions from a superior Vaishnava, and a superior Vaishnava must be ready to help an inferior Vaishnava in all respects. One is superior or inferior according to his spiritual development in Krishna consciousness. One is forbidden to observe the activities of a pure Vaishnava from a material point of view. For the neophyte, especially, considering a pure devotee from a material point of view is very injurious. One should therefore avoid observing a pure devotee externally, but should try to see the internal features and understand how he is engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. In this way, one can avoid seeing the pure devotee from a material point of view, and thus one can gradually become a purified devotee himself. So Srila Prabhupada is elaborating on this point, how to view the devotee, that we do not view the external features of the devotee. We should view the internal features, try to see the internal nature of the devotee, the pure devotees, how they're dedicating themselves to the service of Krishna. Of course, because we are conditioned souls, we're in the bodily concept of life. And we look at people and we judge people based on the body. We look at the body, that's how we consider a person. The people will say, "Whoa, he looks nice. Oh, he looks spiritual. Oh, he looks like he's pure." You know, but that's not how to judge. You don't judge with the eyes. Rather, you have to judge with the ears. You have to see the internal qualities. Just like when you go to the holy place. We don't go to the holy place just for the eye exercise, but we go to the holy place to hear about the glories of the holy place and to hear the wonderful pastimes. People often make this mistake. You know, they go to a place like Vrindavan And they just, I've seen people, they came all the way from America, and they would get to Vrindavan, and they just turn around and go back. They would just be terrified or horrified. They thought, oh my goodness, I can't stay here. I can't stay in this place. So they simply saw the external features. They didn't understand the real nature of the holy Dham. And Rupa Goswami gives the example here about the Ganges River. Now, people come to the Ganga, they go to Mayapur, and they'll see the Ganga, and they will see bubbles and foam and mud, and they'll think, oh, I'm not going to bathe in that. I'm not going to go in that. I'll get disease, I'll get sick if I bathe in that. So people use their material conditioning to judge. They don't understand that the water of the Ganges is completely pure and transcendental. But they see it in a material way. And so Rupa Goswami has given this example. He said, in the same way, we may look at the body of someone and we see, oh, he's diseased, or he's deformed, or he's of a low birth, or he has low characteristics, looks like a very common person, very ordinary person. But that is not how you judge a person. So Prabhupada often faced this kind of problem himself, that sometimes his god brothers would criticize him, and they would say, oh, he's just a businessman. Because Prabhupada did some business before he became full-time devotee, before he took up Krishna consciousness. So those of his god brothers who were in Krishna consciousness, and they'd been brahmacharis and then went on and became sannyasis, they didn't have the same kind of respect for somebody like Srila Prabhupada. Although they knew that he was very qualified. He knew, for example, he knew Sanskrit, he'd been educated in Sanskrit, and he'd been educated in English, although he was Bengali speaking and Hindi speaking, but he knew Sanskrit and he knew English also. And many of them didn't. Many of the other devotees living in that, they didn't know Sanskrit, they didn't know English. But Prabhupada had, and not only did he know it, but he knew other things. He knew things like playing madanga and playing harmonium. So his whole life he'd been following the principles. So he had very special qualities. But they simply thought, oh, he's a grihasta, oh, he had a wife, he had 5 children, he had his business, and they thought they simply looked at the material side. They only saw the external features. They didn't see internally how he was devoted and how he was absorbed in Krishna consciousness. And just like Durvasa Muni looked at Maharaj Ambarish, and he was thinking, Maharaj Ambarish, he's just a king. He's just a king. And we know Lord Chaitanya didn't want even to associate with Maharaj Prataparudra, because for a sannyasi to associate with materialistic people like a king wasn't good. So Durvasa Muni was jealous of Maharaj Ambarish, and he tried to do harm to Maharaj Ambarish. Lord Chaitanya just was cautious about having public meeting with Maharaj Prataparudra. Although later on it did happen that Maharaj Prataparudra did get to meet with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but still it was done in a very confidential way. It wasn't like everybody knew that this is a king. The king disguised himself like a common man. So Lord Chaitanya was cautious about association. At the same time, he recognized that he was a good devotee. But Durvasa Muni, he didn't like the fact that Ambarish Maharaj was being appreciated by the people as being a good devotee. So Durvasa Muni tried to do harm to Maharaj Ambarish. And that's why Durvasa Muni got problems. And he had to run. And he had to run all the way up to the spiritual world and go up to Lord Narayan and then come back and fall at the feet of Maharaj Ambarish to get forgiven. So that's the classic example of the mad elephant offense. You offend a devotee, it's very, very dangerous. So we should be very cautious, never judge devotees by external vision. Rather, we want to offer always our respects to the devotees. That's a nice thing to do. See always the faults in ourselves. Don't try to be seeing faults in other people. We say, be like the bee. Go for the honey, take the nectar from the flower. Don't be like the fly, which always goes to the source. So, finding faults with people, that is the business of the spiritual master. The spiritual master can find fault with the disciples. And Prabhupada used to say, because I am honeycomb with defects, therefore I see defects in others. And he used to quote Chanakya Pandit also, that Chanakya Pandit said it's the business of the spiritual teacher and the father to find the fault in the son, not to praise them. Find the fault, and that way you get more service. You push the son to do better, do better. But it's not the duty of everybody to find fault with everybody else. Certain people in that position, being the father or being the spiritual teacher, they can find the fault. But it's not everybody's job to find the fault with everybody else. So Srila Prabhupada was very concerned how people didn't always appreciate him. And of course, even his own family members, they didn't like that Prabhupada was doing all these things, all this preaching and traveling to foreign countries and becoming a spiritual master, becoming the founder and being honored with the Guru Puja and everything. His family members thought he's just an ordinary man. But they didn't see, they couldn't understand his internal commitment to Krishna consciousness. So sometimes even Prabhupada's godbrothers would they'd talk to the devotees, and they would tell devotees that your Guru Maharaj shouldn't have done this, he shouldn't have done that, and they would find fault with him. But Prabhupada trained the devotees. He said, if people come to you and tell you things about me, he said, you ask them. He said, you should ask them, how many miles have you traveled in the service of Krishna? How many books have you printed? How many disciples, how many people have you brought to Krishna consciousness? So Prabhupada actually wanted to point out the difference between himself and these other people who were criticizing him. It's like, and Prabhupada gives the example, he said, there may be pot marks on the moon, there may be some shadows there on the moon, but the moon is still very beautiful. So, there may be some faults here and there's some things that we didn't do in our Krishna consciousness movement. Maybe some things were not quite exactly as they should be, like establishing the deity worship, and some things were, we're not very qualified to do these things. But Prabhupada somehow he gave the chance and he encouraged the devotees to do it and to pick up the standard, to pick up the standards to the proper level. That in the beginning we may not have done it very properly, just like I remember how we would decorate the deities. If you saw the temples in those days, You know, our deity dresses were very simple. They were not opulent as they are today. Going to the temples today and we see the deities, how they dress, very beautiful. So the standards have come up a lot. But the standard is not only in decoration, but the standard is also in the purity. That the devotees who are worshipping the deity, they have a great responsibility. They have to be very pure. In the temple, two people are very important. The cook and the pujari. The people who are cooking the food, they must be pure. They must be strict. Just like even our Govinda's restaurant, the people cooking there, they should be strict vegetarian. You cannot just simply bring people who are not vegetarian and have them cooking for people. It's not a very good thing, not a very good standard. You want people to cook in the Govinda restaurant, they should be devotees. Then you get proper prasadam. People come to our Govinda restaurant, they come to get prasadam and they expect pure food. Food is very, very important. In China they have a saying that disease comes from the mouth. The things you put in the mouth, if you put the wrong things in, you get disease. The same way, if you have food which is cooked by not materialistic people, then it won't be prasadam. It will, just like we have kanista and madhyam and uttama devotees, so you get prasadam also, which is like that, which is like kanista, madhyam and uttama. You don't get very high level, very pure food. We have to be very careful about these things. We want to have a high standard. Just like you get prasadam, it should be very pure. It should be made by devotees and it should be offered by devotees. Because if people who are not strictly following, if they're cooking for people, then the karma goes in the food. That's very important. You don't want to get karma from eating food. We want to get purified. We expect to get purification when we honor prasadam. And if the food is cooked by people who are not devotees, then we will get karma from it. We have to be very conscious of these things. So the cook and the pujaris, they're very important people. They have to be very strictly following. One time we had an incident in Vrindavan. They were dressing the deities, and at one point one of the deities broke. It got damaged. And then they realized something was wrong. And then at that time, one of the pujaris, then he confessed. He said, "I'm sorry, I haven't been following strictly." And so the result was, it was seen that the deity broke because the devotee was not following strictly. So you have to be very cautious. Somebody is cooking, everybody is affected by the food they cook. That they must follow strictly. It's the duty of the managers to make sure that the people who are doing these jobs, cooking and worshipping, that they're following strictly 4 principles, and they're chanting the holy name 16 rounds. You have to be chanting also. Sometimes people think, "Oh, I'm a pujari, I'm just going to worship the deity, I won't chant." They think they just worship the deity. They think they don't need to chant. That's very wrong. Very wrong. People who worship the deity, they should chant more, with more care, because they're taking on that service to worship the deity and to make the offerings to the deity. So they have to be pure. If they're not pure, the deity won't accept. It's like that. It's very, very important point to understand. to keep the purity of our devotees, the deity worship, and the kitchen. Kitchen is the heart of the temple, because we all eat food. We all eat, and we eat, it comes out of the kitchen. So it must be cooked by people who are strictly following. They have to keep up. We shouldn't think, oh, they're just cooks. We just pay them. They should be strictly practicing. And then you get quality prasadam, powerful prasadam, and people will be purified by it. It's important for us. So there's some point to consider. Then Prabhupada continues, those who think that Krishna consciousness is limited to a certain section of people, a certain section of devotees, or a certain tract of land, are generally prone to see the external feature of the devotee. Such neophytes, unable to appreciate the exalted service of the advanced devotee, try to bring the Mahabhagavat devotee to their platform. We experience such difficulty in propagating Krishna consciousness all over the world. Unfortunately, we are surrounded by neophyte godbrothers who do not appreciate the extraordinary activities of spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world. They simply try to bring us to their platform, and they try to criticize us in every respect. We very much regret the naive activities and poor fund of knowledge. An empowered person who is actually engaged in the confidential service of the Lord should not be treated as an ordinary human being, for it is stated that unless one is empowered by Krishna, one cannot spread the Krishna consciousness movement all over the world. So it is stated in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna Shakti Vininai Tara Pravartan. Kali Yuga Dharma Harinam Sankirtan, Krishna Shakti Vininai Tara Pravartan. That the Dharma for the Kali Yuga is the chanting of the holy names, Krishna Sankirtan. But unless one is empowered with Krishna Shakti, one will not be able to propagate the holy name. And Prabhupada gives the example, he said, just like a lawyer, you may be involved in some legal proceedings, and you may hire a lawyer to represent you in the case. He says, so in the same way, Krishna Shakti Vininahi Tara Pravarta. Krishna empowers people to propagate the holy name. And Srila Prabhupada certainly had that empowerment. He must have been empowered to do all the things which he did, which were so extraordinary. When we hear about them, people hear about them, they just become astonished. It's just amazing how Prabhupada at the age of 70 could go to America with no money, and he didn't know anybody, but he went there and somehow he got people and he started a worldwide organization. And he did it on his own, without any help. And he wrote the books, translated the books, he taught the devotees, everything. Didn't just teach them kirtan, he taught them cooking, he taught them cleanliness, he taught them etiquette, everything. It all came from Prabhupada. And Prabhupada, of course, was trained by his own father and his own spiritual master. So parampara, he connected us to the parampara. But sometimes people will think, well, oh, Bhaktivedanta Swami, he's not a Brahmana. He's not born in a Brahmana family, so he can't be a very great devotee. They think like that. They think because he wasn't born in a Brahmana family. So they're thinking again in terms of the birth. Or they're thinking, well, he's just some Bengali. He's just a Bengali from, you know, what does he know? You know, he's just an ordinary person. And they don't appreciate the extraordinary activities which he actually did. They want to minimize everything. They themselves can do nothing, but they look at, they criticize Prabhupada and they try to reduce it. Prabhupada gives an example about how one man was envious of the other man. The one man was telling the man, he said, my son has become a high court judge. So the man who was envious said, well, he may be a high court judge, but he's not getting the salary of a high court judge. So this is envy, you see. So in the same way people were envious of Prabhupada. They said, oh, Swamiji went to America, but look at the people he preached to. He just preached to these people. They were hippies, they were all useless people, they were all low-class people, uneducated, uncultured people. And he preached to them and somehow he influenced them and took them on. So he didn't really, in this way they minimize the preaching of Srila Prabhupada. They don't recognize what he actually did. And Prabhupada said this is true with his own god brothers. His own god brothers would make this fault. They had this fault. They could not see the good that he was doing. And they said why he uses the name Prabhupada, that is the name of his Guru Maharaj. But many people use the name Prabhupada. Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, Sanatana Goswami Prabhupada. Many people took the name Prabhupada. It was customary. So Prabhupada also wanted to take the name Prabhupada. But Prabhupada actually never took the name. It was the disciples. We gave the name Prabhupada to Prabhupada. We gave him the name Prabhupada. And but you could say he allowed us. But Prabhupada himself, when his god brothers came and protested about it, they said, you've taken this name Prabhupada, this is the title of your Guru Maharaj, this is not good. But Prabhupada said, look, I haven't taken the name Prabhupada. And Prabhupada took out his letterhead and he showed them his own letterhead. It had A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. It didn't have Prabhupada. He said, I don't use the name Prabhupada. He said, my disciples use the name for me. And so, and this way then the god brothers, they said, okay. they accepted. But this kind of criticism went on, different criticisms. Oh, we allow women into our society. Prabhupada initiated women as well as men. And Gaudiya Math, they didn't have any women. They only had men. And they thought very strange to have all these women there and that. They criticized that. But Prabhupada explained, he said how in Western world you can't separate the men and the women. Everywhere there's men and women. You can't separate them. Here in India it's a bit different, you know. Here in India you see the men much more prominent than the women. Women are a bit more in the background. You don't see women so much. But in the Western countries, women are everywhere. Not only Western countries, outside of India, you know, you go to countries like Philippines, women everywhere, doing everything. And you go to Thailand, women everywhere, you know. It just, you know, the men are just in the back, they let the women do everything. But here in India, you see it's men everywhere. It's a different kind of environment, different society. But people couldn't appreciate that, and they criticized Prabhupada. But because Prabhupada allowed women into the movement, he made it was successful. They have to judge by the results. You judge everything by the results, and you can see the results Prabhupada got from his preaching. That he could open temples all over the world. And although he allowed women into the movement, they kept the men and the women separate, not just mixing all together. And so their criticism was not really justified. And of course we were reading yesterday about how they criticized it. He gave the title Goswami to people. They didn't like these. They didn't like it when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati initiated people, gave them the Brahmin thread. People who were not from Brahmana families, he gave them the Brahmin thread. So they criticized Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he even got threats on his life. They wanted to kill him. He was so powerful. They were so afraid of him. They were so jealous of him. They wanted to kill him. And then it got bad again when Prabhupada went to the West and brought Westerners here. Okay. When one thus criticizes a pure devotee, he commits an offense, Vaishnav aparad. That is very obstructive and dangerous to for those who desire to advance in Krishna consciousness. A person cannot derive any spiritual benefit when he offends the lotus feet of a Vaishnava. Everyone should therefore be very careful not to be jealous of an empowered Vaishnava or a Shuddha Vaishnava. It is also an offense to consider an empowered Vaishnava an object of disciplinary action. Described that, well, if you're not successful, even you practice for a short time, you will take birth in the future. You'll first of all, after you've practiced for a short time, but you're not successful, you will take birth in a good family. And you'll be born in a wealthy family or an aristocratic family. And in this way you'll have a chance to continue in the future. And if you practice for a long time and not successful, then next life you will take birth in a family of devotees. And in a family of devotees, from the beginning of your birth, you have the opportunity to be Krishna conscious. Just like Prabhupada said, he was born in a family of devotees. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was also born in a family of devotees. So that's an indication that from the previous life they had a lot of piety, and therefore they were born into a good situation, which makes it so much easier to take up Krishna consciousness. Of course, not always. We see people born in devotee families, they don't become devotees. Even though the mother and father may be devotees, somehow when the children grow up, they don't worry about it, they don't think about it. And now Prabhupada had children himself. Prabhupada had 3 sons, and he used to bring them to the temple. But, you know, after they grew up, they didn't become much devoted. They didn't take a lot of interest in Krishna consciousness. But Prabhupada gave them a good education as children. He tried his best to give them Krishna consciousness. And so that's the benefit you get, you know? That even if you're not successful, they'll take birth in a very good family. And if they are successful, what benefit will they get? They'll go back to Godhead. They'll get free of birth and death. And how do you know that they will get this benefit? They'll just be so happy. They'll be so satisfied. They will feel so much peace of mind. And you look at other people in the material world, materialistic people, and you see how miserable they are. In their old age, they're miserable. In their married life, they're miserable. It's all misery from beginning to end because they're struggling with their mind and senses, trying to satisfy their mind and senses. They're never happy. So this way they suffer. But a devotee, we say whether he lives or dies, it doesn't matter. Look at the life of the devotee. They're chanting and dancing, they're happy, they're eating nice prasadam, we have nice feasts and festivals. And if we die, we'll take birth again in Krishna consciousness. We'll go on and serve Krishna some other place. So it doesn't matter for a devotee. But one who is not a devotee is living in hell. And when he dies, he will go to hell. So, who is right? Who's made the good choice? You think the karmi, the butcher, the meat eater, do you think they're happy because they eat meat? You think they're happy? No, they're not happy. They're suffering, misery, so much suffering. Yes, Prabhu.
Maharaj's question is that we see in the life of devotees, even after understanding that this material life is futile, but still when they have their own children, they give them the materialistic education rather than giving them Vedic education. So even after like getting this knowledge and everything, still why they do that? Why do they give their children material education?
Well, that's their mistake. They give them material education. But generally, you know, people need some kind of education. They need to learn some things. But you know, how much education you actually need, that is debatable. Sometimes people, you can see people, they'll spend all their money to get education. I don't know about here in India, probably in India also, to get education, right? Rahul, how much money did you spend to get an MBA? Yeah?
7 lakh rupees.
Huh?
7 lakh rupees.
7 lakh rupees. Wow. That's quite a lot of money, yeah. And no guarantee that you would get it, right? You have to do all the work. You have to pass to get it. And some places you spend more than that. You know, there's different levels of educational institutes, and so if you want to get an MBA from Harvard University or something, you know, then in America you really spend a lot of money. You know, it's not cheap education. It's a big business. But people are so blind. You know, they think, you know, oh, you need good education. You may get a good job, make good money. Oh, I was telling, you know, there's one devotee, his daughter, she got a degree from a very good university, very, very top university. She got her degree with honors and distinction. And she got a very good job in the government, you know, and she's so happy. I got the job I wanted in the government, and it's off. But then when she went to work, she has to work with this. The woman in charge is just horrible, you know. Really nasty, really horrible person. So that's what happens in the material world, you know. You get these jobs and you have to work with these horrible people, horrible situations. And it's just misery from beginning to end. You know, you spend so much time, so much money to get degrees, and then you get the job, and it's just not what you thought it's going to be. It's just misery, just suffering. So material education just makes you more of an animal. That is material, the result of material education. I remember when I was at college that they had a medical department, and they used to have a competition. Every Friday night they used to have the beer drinking contest. And every week it was always the medical students who won. They would drink the most beer every Friday. You know? And it was a big thing, you know, big event. You know, so many students would all come, the beer drinking contest. This is student life, you know, they're thinking, this is the culture, this is the life. And these people are going on to become doctors and so on like that. And drunkards. Drunkards. Actually, why they become drunkards? Because every day when they do the training in medical, they cut up dead bodies every day. They have all these dead bodies, and the students come and they have to cut them up and take out the different parts, and they have to get familiar with that. So every day they do this thing, you know, they go there, they have these dead bodies, and the students have to go and they're cutting up these dead bodies and taking out the organs and things. It's just horrible, horrible. This is what you have to do to become a doctor, you know, at least I know in the college I was there, they were doing that. Every day they had to go, and so no wonder they wanted to drink beer, they just wanted to forget, you know. Forget about the body, this horrible body. They're cutting up every day these pieces, taking out the parts, the different organs and the different limbs of the body. And this is material education. They're thinking. And they spend so much money. The government spends so much money to train people, to get people like that. The young people all think, I want to be a doctor. Some young kids at the school, what do you want to do? I want to study medicine, I want to be a doctor. They don't realize what you have to do to be a doctor. And they have to work all night often. They have to be there in the hospital the whole night. They have to, you know, no regulation, you've got to be there in the hospital in the night and take care of people coming there in the middle of the night. That is their life, you know. It's not very pleasant. But there, people are thinking, no, doctor, that's a good job. They're thinking. Actually, it's like a butcher. You're like a butcher, cutting the body, cutting the parts. Yes, Prabhu?
So Maharaj, this is, I have this question from long time, that we say that we shouldn't worship anyone in front of deities. So even to that extent that we say that Tulsi Puja is also not done in front of deities when altar is open. So I have this question that why do we do Guru Puja in front of deities? As you mentioned that they also say, I have this.
Well, if you look in Nectar of Devotion, it said we shouldn't actually do Guru Puja in front of the deities. It's there in the Nectar of Devotion, but Prabhupada allowed it. And so it's discussed in one of Hari Sori's books. Hari Sori Prabhu wrote his diaries, and he discusses in one point in his diaries with it. It was discussed with Prabhupada. They asked Prabhupada about it. Asked Prabhupada, why is it we do the we do your Guru Puja in front of the deities? We're not supposed to worship people in front of the deities. And Prabhupada said, well, it's just the enthusiasm of the devotees. The devotees want to do it. like that. So Prabhupada would allow it. But actually, it's there, nectar of devotion, that we don't really worship. We shouldn't really worship the Guru in front of the deities. But somehow it happened with Prabhupada that we used to do that. Because Prabhupada used to come, he used to go out for a walk, and he would come back, and he'd come back for the deity greeting. So we'd have the deity greeting, and then after the deity greeting, then Prabhupada would sit on the Vyasa-san, and then they would offer the Guru Puja, and then Prabhupada would give class. So it was just convenient like that. It was just done that way, and you could say for convenience, that Prabhupada would sit down, and they would have the Guru Puja, and then Prabhupada would give class. So nobody ever, and Prabhupada never corrected anybody, never said you shouldn't do that. But he pointed out that he just accepted that this was the enthusiasm of the devotees. That the devotees had that enthusiasm that they just wanted to worship Prabhupada in that way. And Prabhupada accepted that. And so Prabhupada was not so worried about the different rules and regulations. And even Tulsi, you say we shouldn't worship Tulsi in front of the deities, but that's not true. Jananivas Prabhu told me that he said, no, you can do it. He said, you can worship Tulsi in front of the deities. He said, I don't know why people have this understanding that we cannot worship Tulsi in front of the deities, but we can. You can do it. You don't have to close the curtains to worship Tulsi. That's what I heard from Jananivas Prabhu, who is a very senior brahmachari, and you know, he's an authority on deity worship. And he told me like that. Okay, any other questions? Yeah? No? Okay, 3 o'clock. I think I have to stop here. Okay, so I'm leaving tomorrow morning early. So I thank all of you for your association. And I'll be coming back, hopefully, after some time. So be good. Right? Stay alive. Stay alive in Krishna consciousness. That's the important thing. Right? What does the son have to do to inherit the property of the father? The father is a rich man. The son wants to inherit the property of the father. What does he have to do? He has to stay alive, right? He has to stay alive. Don't die. And then when the father dies, then you get everything. So the same way, if we stay alive in Krishna consciousness, then very easily we can also get everything. The kingdom of God will become ours. Okay, thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki.
We are very thankful for the association of Maharaj.